Hi there, so today you're going to learn how to make a smartphone feature film via Courtney G. Jones. Today we're going to look at his feature film Woodwitch and his sci-fi series Uprising. It's an amazing interview, you'll learn so much from him, there's tips galore in this. So without any further ado, let's learn how to make a feature film on a smartphone. Hi there, so I'm Rob, I'm a smartphone filmmaker, and today I'm here with Courtney G. Jones. Hi Courtney.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, how you doing?
Hey, doing the best I can with what we got, right?
Cool. Well, we're here to talk about your feature film, Woodwitch, and we're going to talk about projects you've got going on as well in pre-production. But first, going to your feature film that's on Amazon Prime, I'll put a link in the description below for that as well, and all of Courtney's social media links, all that kind of stuff. So with Woodwitch, you just give the audience a little synopsis of what it's about.
So Woodwitch is, kind of sort of based on Norse mythology, easy to
Mm-hmm.
say. Um, easier to shoot than it is to say. Um, where Hela, the goddess of the underworld, has been has been sent to Midgard, which is Earth,
Mm-hmm.
um, to spend the rest of her days, in the form of a tree. But unfortunately, uh, a couple of, two couples, these young adults, kind of on a mission to find this thing, wake her up, and all hell breaks loose, literally.
I see it. It's a really fun film. It's definitely got a bit of a Blair Witch feel to it as well at times.
Right. Yeah. You know what? I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, because that was actually part of uh, the reason to do it. So I wanted to do what I called a hybrid found footage. Blair Witch Project was a found footage movie, and this was a hybrid found footage because, all pretty much all the four kids, I call them kids, they were young adults. um but they all had cameras, and so they were capturing, stuff, and I used all those cameras that they were using in the movie. But then I was the movie camera, I was on the outside of them. Anytime you saw all four of them, or you saw, the monster or whatever, that was typically my camera. But I tried to do it in such a way where it felt like it was integrated, like, you wouldn't think about it too much. So I used everyone's, and we had a combination uh of mobile phones, which I shot on a mobile phone. One of the other characters, who was trying to be like a mobile journalist,
Yeah.
sort of, she was, out of college doing that. And then one of the other characters had a DSLR, and another one had a like a little Sony action cam. So we had a mixture of different cameras, all the time. And so I was
That's
able to just
awesome.
kind of cherry pick between, when one angle turned bad, then I was able to switch over to another angle. Excuse me.
That's a really good kind of advantage to have there as well. If you've got a few different shots, if one, yeah, somehow doesn't quite work, then you've got, two or three other ones you can pick from and then edit that together and kind of maybe have a scene that looks slightly different to how you imagine, but it could be even better as well.
Yeah, and then I tried to use my camera as, the backup camera, that, okay, if all the other cameras are bad, or there's something that I just really wanted to punch in and punch up, then I could cut to my camera.
Yeah.
But the other cameras did, I would say about 80% of the work, on the project. So
Wow. What phone cameras did you actually use? Which ones were you using for yours and for everyone else's?
at the time, I was on all Samsung phones, so I was using the Galaxy Note 4 or 5,
Okay.
at
Yeah.
the time, and then the Samsung Galaxy, like 5, something like that. Yeah, so it was, back in the day, it was like the top of the line Samsung phones,
Nice.
but by today's standards, and they looked great, for the time. And then the other cameras, the DSLR was a Canon T3i, so not even a high end, not even like a 5D or anything like that.
It really works because also if it's like found footage kind of feel, it doesn't need to look super, super polished. If anything, that would kind of take away from it.
Right. If it looked too polished, or if I had, known actors, then you'd be like, well, that's,
Sorry, how did you cast the actors?
right. So, I knew that I wanted to not have faces, in
Yeah.
the project. project. So, and I wanted to shoot it all locally. I live in a place called Bainbridge Island, which is just directly west of Seattle. It's like the first island directly west of Seattle. So I knew I wanted to shoot here, and shoot in your own backyard, right?
Yeah,
So 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 there was this young gentleman named Cameron who was a checker at Safeway at the supermarket here on the island,
no
and
way.
yeah, and so I was just like, hey, have you done any acting? Because I thought he had an interesting look, and he was a really super cool personality, and we had talked a few times. Yeah, so I said, hey, have you done any acting? He's like, just funny you should say that. I was just getting ready to move to LA to try to start doing some acting. And I said, well,
Wow.
before we move, shoot,
Stop.
don't go. So and I said, well, do you have any friends who are actors as well, that, and so he reached out to some of his friends that he went to university with, and happened to be all in acting class together. And so there were two girls and another guy, and I was just like, that's perfect, that's exactly what I needed.
That's amazing. I was thinking actually because the chemistry of the team was really good, so that is such an advantage if they know each other already and they've probably acted with each other in classes and such already. Yeah,
Right,
it didn't feel like people who were just trying to make a film together. It felt like they already knew each other, which was good.
Right. So we knew that there, that there was going to be a little bit of chemistry. And then one of the things that I had them do, because a couple of them didn't know each other as well. Like they think they knew of each other, but didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And so what I had them do was, as our rehearsals, would just have them hang out. Just have them hang out and go do stuff, go on hikes, go on, go do this, go do that. And they did it, and it worked out really well. So it's this movie was kind of an exercise in using resources. So I used the island, I used the phones and the DSLR and the little cameras that I had, and the actors were local actors, and it worked.
How did you kind of use locations? How did you scout locations? And did you have to use like permits, anything like that? Was it a place you could kind of just rock up and start shooting?
Yeah, no permits.
Yeah.
I've been in the business for like 30 years now, and I've worked on permitted things and I've worked on non-permitted things, and
Yeah.
the non-permitted things are sometimes a little bit more fun, because
Yeah.
you're going in there. Guerrilla filmmaking is sometimes really fun. But no, so we shot in the city just briefly, like some driving shots, and then one beach shot, at the beginning of the movie. The the kids, I call, sorry, I keep calling them kids, but but I feel like an old man.
These 10-year-olds that run off into the woods.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like any good horror movie, you take a bunch of young people out in the woods and kill them. That's what
Yeah.
you do. But no, so we shot over in the city a little bit, and so we didn't need permits, because we were shooting fast, we were shooting public, and we just banged it out. Then we got on the ferry, and I shot literally this movie in sequence, which helped the actors a whole lot. So we started out in the city, and then we ended up on the island. So there was some city shots, there were ferry, because you have to take a ferry to get here, some ferry shots, of them just being young and vivacious, and then they got to the family house that they ended up to, and then they went on their camping journey. And so the like all the locations that we shot including the town museum, like we have a historical museum here on the island, and we shot there with permission. We got permission to shoot there for that. But everything else was like friends' houses, and then we shot in the woods. We shot on all these beautiful trails, and they're all public trails. And one area called the Grand Forest, and the other one called Gasm Lake. And those two, we just took those trails over, and that was a lot of fun. Because every once in a while, an onlooker would come by, and they'd
Yeah.
hear screaming and running, and And they're like, what's going on, so.
Nice. And how did you raise the budget for it? Was it something where you kind of just saved up a bit and kind of made it work, or do you have a Kickstarter?
Yeah, it was all self-funded, and so, that and my last feature film, that I did. So we did Woodwitch about, oh God, now I think it'll be 6 years this year, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, it's sometimes these things take a long time. So
yes.
I'm sure we can talk about the distribution, of it a little bit later, but
Yeah.
excuse me. But yeah, so so the last two of my features I've self-funded. So yeah,
Awesome. Fair play.
well, look, I mean, so you probably can't see it up on my wall. It's like, I believe in, you don't need permission to create your vision.
Yeah.
So waiting for permission also sometimes equates to waiting for somebody to give you money,
Yeah.
you know. And
True.
so I made it with what I had, So and that's how we did it. And we did it in, I don't know, maybe 7 days, you know,
7 days.
altogether. Yeah, yeah.
Really? Um,
Well, one of the bonuses of having, essentially four cameras running all the time is that you're
yeah.
getting your coverage, so you don't have to do multiple takes. Every once in a while I'd have them do multiple takes, and they improvised 90% of the dialogue. Sometimes I
Oh,
would give
wow.
them dialogue for the scene, sometimes I
Yeah.
would, give them a whole thing, but um
So
but
did you give
yeah.
them the breakdown of the story and then said kind of work around that?
Right. So I wrote it in, what I call a scriptment, and I'm not the only one that calls it that, but so it's more than a treatment and a little bit less than a script, so
Yeah.
it doesn't have all of the dialogue. And then some of the action is written a little bit more in story form, as opposed to action that you would see in a normal script, so some of it was regular action, some of it was a little bit more in story, giving the feel of what is going on. So I was able to kind of talk to them. They knew their characters, which was great, so that was always the jumping off point. Like, your character would do X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
and in those confines, say something to the effect of blah blah blah, you know and that's kind of how we worked it.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
How did they react to working on a film that was being shot on a smartphone? Were they kind of like excited by it, or was it a bit like
they
smartphone?
were
What?
they were excited, and none of them had any film experience, really, so they were really excited. They were excited to be doing anything, and
Yeah.
I was really excited, for them, because this was something that they I mean, they legitimately worked really hard, so I was really excited for them to see what they were going to do. And it was almost like improv theater, so I
Yeah.
love. And yeah, I was really excited to do this, to use this technology, because although at the time I don't think, I can't remember if we did it right before Tangerine or not. But there were not a lot of features being shot on smartphones,
Yeah.
so yeah. And then pretty much right after that, I'm not saying I started it, I'm just saying that, I was I was right in the
Exclusive.
beginning. Yeah, yeah. But and then as it picked up, as the iPhones and Samsung phones got better and better at shooting, I was just like, you know what, I believe that I could do it. It was almost an experiment, because if you look at some of the shots between the DSLR and the phone, a lot of people can't tell the difference between which one is which, because
I've watched it. I had no idea there's any DSLR footage used of it
right,
until you just said.
right. So, because at the time DSLRs were getting, were taking up all the oxygen in terms of all that, because it was just like, oh, finally we have a tool that we can use as an independent, producer director, that we have access to, and we can, go and get it from Best Buy and then return it when I'm done.
And
That's
yeah, I've heard of people doing that, renting gear or
great.
like taking gear and taking it back.
Yeah. And that's great. But and so when I had, um you're familiar with the Beastgrip, obviously,
Yes, I was going to ask you about that actually.
yeah. So I had bought the original Beastgrip, the one that Vadim Chilenko, who is the founder of Beastgrip, you know, this great company that makes cages and things for your phone, so you can put it in and rig things. And I see, you know, there's a cage behind you that you put your phone on, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's the Ulanzi Urig Pro, yeah.
Ulanzi, and then but you're able to rig a bunch of, you know, cool things on top of it, and you know, be able to put it on a tripod and all that. But you know, I got the original, and I was just like, and I sent a message to Vadim. I was like, hey, I love this thing, you know, and I'm getting ready to shoot a movie with it. And he hit me back and was just like, hey, I've got the prototype for what is now the Beastgrip Pro. I've got the prototype, and I'll send it to you, use it. And so I use that to capture on the movie. So one of the characters, yeah, one of the characters in the movie, she was using the original, you know, Beastgrip, and then I was using the Beastgrip Pro as the movie camera.
You're kind of creating a bit of smartphone history, really.
Well,
Without even knowing it, almost.
And I'm not saying I started it. It was really nice to be, you know, at the bleeding edge of this emerging tech, you know, and
Yeah.
that's what I love. And to this day, you know, I'm a beta tester on different apps that we use, you know, to shoot and to edit and all that kind of stuff. Just because I love the technology, I love trying to help push it. And again, this particular movie was just about an experiment, really. Can we do this, and can we get something really good out of a smartphone?
I was going to ask as well, because Christopher's asked a few of these questions from Mobile Filmmaking YouTube channel, which people should definitely check out as well. He asked another question about which app did you use on your phone when you were making the film, or did you use that?
Yeah, so at the time, I wasn't. I used a couple of different apps. One was, I think it was Cinema F5V at the time, because I don't think I was aware of Filmic Pro. But if I had known about Filmic Pro, I probably would have used it. But Cinema F5V, and then the native camera app for the young lady who was carrying the smartphone in the movie. So
yeah. Okay, cool. So is that an app that's still about now, is it, or was it kind of been taken over by others?
You know, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if it's still out, but it was Cinema F5V. It was very much like like Filmic Pro is today, but not as full featured, you know, and but you know, gave me a little bit of control.
Well, I was going to ask as well, obviously, if you had the kind of prototype of the Beastgrip, but now you still use it consistently, what's the reason for using that rig specifically in that film and currently?
So what I really wanted to do was be able to, you know, because when you have your phone, and I'm just going to grab my phone, when you have your phone and you're shooting with your phone with it on its own, you get all these micro jitters, right? You know,
Oh, yeah. Big time.
And yeah, it doesn't look as good. Yeah, even if you're intending to be handheld, right? Even if it's a handheld shot, you don't want it, you know, doing all that wobbly stuff. And so I wanted to be able to take it and stabilize the camera a little bit more, right? So number one, when it was handheld, it was a little bit more stable because you had grip on. You had a little extra wider grip. But then two, for when I was using it, I had this shoulder rig. It kind of clamped over my shoulder and then had an arm out, and I was able to kind of screw that onto screw the Beastgrip onto that rig. And so you know, it was literally a part of my body, you know, so I could take my hands off of it and move like this, and it would just stay locked. And that's how I pretty much did most of, like 90% of my coverage from my phone.
So it's always kind of stabilized as well from the shoulder, almost.
Right. Always, it was a shoulder rig that came out, but it literally clamped onto my body.
Are they expensive, the shoulder rigs?
It's been so long, but I can't believe that I can't believe that I would have paid a lot for it, because at the time I was also trying to see how cheap I could do it. Yeah, so I'm sure I got it off of Amazon, you know. I wasn't trying to spend a lot of money on that. I wanted to spend a lot of money on food, you know.
Oh yeah, you got to feed your crew cast.
Right. That's the number one thing. I mean, that, you know, the number one rule, have to feed them well. That is the number one rule. If you don't do that, then you lose your cast and crew.
And I was going to ask you about the crew. And so how many of you were actually working on the film outside of the actors? Was it you and one or two other people? Was it a big sort of setup?
So it was me and my sound guy. That was the
Literally
crew.
you two.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was just, well, so you know, but I did have my sister-in-law. She would come up, I think, on the weekends and shoot. You know, maybe she would, you know, take her camera and shoot some stuff, you know, some B-roll and whatnot.
Is she a
And my
filmmaker herself?
she was, yeah, she was a budding filmmaker. She's not anymore, but
Okay.
she was at the time.
Cool.
And then my wife and son, you know, they would, you know, my son was, oh man, he was 4 or 5 at the time. So yeah, they would deliver the food, you know. So they, you know, I put in my order, and then they would show up. Yeah, I you know, stop filming and say, okay, I need to make a call. So I take the phone off, you know, make the call. It's like, hey, we're gonna be ready for lunch in an hour or whatever it was, and then put the phone back on the rig and continue shooting. Um, but yeah, and then they would deliver food. But the onset, you know, all the time, it was just me and Mickey McMullen, who is one of the, you know, Emmy award-winning sound guys on that show, The Amazing Race. You know, so it was great.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, sound incredibly important. You can have a crappy, you know, visual, but if you have really crappy sound, then you know you're done. But the good thing about working with Mickey was, because he worked on The Amazing Race, he's able to get good sound on the run. But Mickey had his stuff in a pouch with his rain poncho over it, you know, and then he had, you know, them mic'd up and all of that kind of stuff. So it
For
was
anyone
great.
who hasn't seen the film, like you need someone who can run with the sound.
Yes, I mean, because that's literally what he does on The Amazing Race, is running with the camera and the people who are on camera, just literally just, you know, full on sprinting all day. Another bonus to shooting with, you know, with either a DSLR, but in particular a smartphone rig, is, you know, sure, you could have an Alexa, you know, or a red camera that, you know, the body's about that big, you know, and then you put a lens that's that big, but then you got to put all the other stuff on it, you know, in order to carry it around, and it just becomes this behemoth, and
Yeah.
it has to be heavy, you know. But when you're shooting with a mobile phone, you know, everything can be light and fluid, and that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about filming with the mobile phone.
And did
Yeah.
you use any particular lenses for it? It seemed like it was the stock lens of the phone, but was there anything that maybe
Right.
I didn't
Right.
notice?
So on the phone, on both phones, I 99% of the time I used just the stock lens, which was great. But every once in a while, I would put on my phone there. I had a Beastgrip, like sort of like a diopter, you know, something to, you know, to either, you know, make it wider or tighter. And I would screw on this little diopter, and you know, it's about that big, you know, it's a 37 millimeter a diopter, and so I would put that on there, you know. But that was every once in a while, and it was only for something specific.
Working with what I love about this whole thing is that you're using like family, locations, locals. Like this is like kind of low budget filmmaking at its best, like using people around you, um, and just kind of like hoping that people are kind enough to help out. And most people are as well. If you ask people, usually people are quite excited to work on a film, and if they know your heart's in the right place and you're making something that's worth working on, a lot of people will kind of give up time and stuff like that, and then you can also return the favor back for them as well.
The cast, you know, they were so great and so helpful. So like two of the characters had to have backpacks on, right? And just because they were going camping, right?
Yeah.
But instead of camping gear in there, I had a lot of the filmmaking gear. So I was carrying a backpack, and my rig. They were carrying backpacks and other gear, you know, that we would
That's a
take
good
with
idea,
us.
actually. Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, because you never saw any of that stuff, you know.
Yeah, you'd
So
never have noticed.
yeah, and that was great. We did, um we had a couple of scenes where we had tents, you know, but I shot that across the street from my house at the neighbors. And
Really?
yeah, because
That's a great bit of cheating because I never knew that.
well, they've got acres and acres and acres, so so I was just like, hey, can we just pick a spot, and do this little camping scene? They're like, yeah, go ahead. So I just grabbed my camping gear and just walked it across the street and put it yeah, so that worked out really well. By the way, when you're shooting on an island, the size of ours, it's like 15 minutes in any direction, you're at the other end of the island. So so if you forget something, you just run back home and grab it and come
That's
back.
really
But
cool.
again, because we shot it on it shot it in sequence, I we knew the trails that we wanted to go on, and so we knew that if we went this way on this particular trail, it was going to end us up where we were going to have where we were going to see the monster for the first time. But then if we went this way and then up the hill, that was where we were going to have like the showdown. And
It all
so
mapped out, yeah.
we had it all mapped out. We just took a look at the trail maps. Like, okay, we're going to go from here to here. We're going to have this here, and we're going to have that there, and then we're going to end. And literally, we just did a loop, and then ended back up at the cars.
Great.
So that was our day most of the time.
And with then
Yeah.
the monster and such, with the green screen, how much did you use it, and how did the actors find using it? Was that outdoors? I presume you had to use it as well.
Right. So I only used that for a couple of scenes. So there,
Okay.
when I knew that I wanted to composite, because I didn't want to have to um do a lot of rotoscoping or anything like that, because I number one, I wasn't that good at it, so I hated rotoscoping. So I knew that if I could throw a green screen or blue screen up behind them, that I could comp the monster behind somebody. And so that's the only time when I really used it. Otherwise, yeah, and the kids were fine. I mean, all the actors were fine with being able to do it. I mean, because it didn't change their performance as much, because they still had to pretend that there was
Yeah.
this thing in front of them. But yeah, it worked really well. It was just this pop-up green screen, right? So it was literally, we pop it up. The two of the actors who were not on screen were there holding it in place while somebody else was on screen, and
Proper
that
team
was,
effort.
yeah. And then I would just shoot a plate, and then get them to move out, and then just roll the plate, and that was it.
And Christopher, on that note as well, I wanted to ask, what did you use for the visual effects? What kind of software and things did you use?
Right. So I used I'm an Adobe guy, when it comes to to a lot of different editing. My workflow has changed a little bit now, but I used Adobe Premiere and After Effects to edit and do the visual effects. So it's because what I knew. I've been using After Effects for forever, so I just used
Oh, use what you know. Yeah, definitely.
I've used another software, the 3D software, two 3D softwares actually. One was Cinema 4D, and then the other one was DAZ 3D. So those are the ones that I use to animate the CG character in there.
And something I wanted to ask you, that I really wanted to ask you, with Woodwitch, after seeing the film back, what aspects of it were you surprised by, in terms of like, oh wow, I didn't expect it to be that good? Like, what really works that you maybe weren't sure at the time?
I'm really surprised at how good the image quality was on the cameras then. The
Yeah,
mobile
yeah.
phone then. I mean, the DSLR, that's if it's not good on a DSLR, you're really doing something wrong. But on the camera, on the smartphone, there's always been low light issues. There's always been stabilization issues, all those things. But I'm really surprised, really surprised at how good it was. And I think I only shot, because I don't even think we were able to shoot in 4K
Yeah.
at the time. I honestly don't remember, but my gut is telling me that we only shot in 1080.
What did you learn from making Woodwitch that you'll take on into future projects?
Couple of the things that I learned is, the process is always still the same, no matter if you're using a red camera, an Alexa, or a smartphone, or a DSLR. Is, you still have to interact with the actors, and you still have to light it, you still have to do the things that you would normally do on a movie using a smartphone. But the thing that I learned is what the things that you really don't need, some of the things that you think that you think that you need this massive crew. And on my last feature, which was my third feature, I had a massive crew, which was great because I did need them for that particular show. But for the most part, you don't need as much as you think you need. You
Mhm.
need your phone, you need some decent lighting, and you need good sound. Those are the things that I know. And then your workflow can change a whole lot with, I mean, you still have to edit it, but the things that you have, the software that you have to edit with, so knowing what I know now, excuse me, knowing what I know now, I can shoot on my phone and edit on LumaFusion, to get it. And then if I wanted to take my 4K footage, out, or even 8K footage out from my phone to LumaFusion and then bring that into a computer, I can still do that, and it's great. So I'm sure we're going to talk about one of our other projects, but I'll explain my workflow. But your workflow can get really tight now and less expensive than you think than it needs to be. So
Yes, definitely. I've made a few short films over this kind of whole period, and you do realize, oh, actually, if you know what you're doing and learn how to do it the best you can make really good stuff with little money. And if it's got a good story as well, even better. Obviously, the story's kind of the main thing, but you
yeah.
don't need a budget to make a good film.
Right. No, you don't. And you are a shining example of that. I mean, you've gotten your projects into like SF3, and all these. And so,
Thanks.
but that wasn't because you had an Alexa or, Avid or Premiere or, all those things. And you had a good
iPhone
story.
6S.
You didn't have the latest phone, which
Yeah,
is also another thing. It's like that's something else that you don't need. And that's where my mantra came from, is that you don't need permission to create your vision. So it's, stop waiting for all those things. Stop waiting for the latest greatest, iPhone, or Samsung Ultra Plus, Pro, whatever it is. Don't wait for that. If you got something in your pocket that can shoot 1080p or better, go shoot.
I wanted to ask you if you've got any advice for budding smartphone filmmakers as well, whether it's for feature films, short films, series, whatever it is. What would your advice be to the latest smartphone filmmakers, people who are thinking of getting into it?
You have everything you need in your pocket to make a project. I mean, literally, you can use Filmic Pro or even the native app on whatever phone that you have, right? Um, and if you have an Android, you have options in terms of editing software. You have like KineMaster, which works on both Android and iOS. My preferred weapon is LumaFusion, in
Yes, yeah.
terms of editing, which has turned into my actual workflow, even when I'm shooting bigger projects. So uh, yeah, I mean, you have it all there. Don't wait for permission.
Yes.
Don't wait to have all the perfect gear and you don't need a $1,200 light. You can get $120 light, and a little bit of more support gear. So don't spend a whole lot of money either. you
Yeah,
know
don't bankrupt yourself.
right? Yeah, I mean, it's just movie making, and hopefully, if you get called up to the big leagues, then that's when you can spend all the money. But right now, just create, because the more you create, the better you get at creating.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
that's just the reality.
yeah, you
So
learn the most by actually doing it.
I've seen your stuff. When you started out and your stuff was good already, but then it just, you could tell every time you do something, you accelerate. You put your foot on the gas pedal a little bit more, and you're just like, oh, I'm faster, I'm more efficient. I know my angles more now. So I've seen it with your work. So and the more you do it, and I do it the same. I've been in the business for a lot of years.
Yeah.
you know and I still constantly learn something and am trying to plus it, every time. And And that's only because I have the technology where I can just go out and shoot and make mistakes.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes is a big one as well. I know a lot of people don't get started or give up because they don't like failing and stuff like that. That's kind of part of the process. If you don't fail, you're never going to succeed, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, how will you know that you've succeeded unless you failed? So that's another big part of it is not being afraid to go out there and and blow it.
Yeah.
And I've blown it a lot of times. I've blown it with a lot of money, and I've blown it with no money. So but I've still blown it. you so yeah, no, it's go out, you've got it, it's in your pocket, go shoot.
So that brings us on really nicely to your latest projects, Uprising.
Simple.
So could you tell us a little bit about your latest projects, if you
Mhm.
can? Tell us as much as you can about the story and what it is all about.
Uprising is a science fiction series. Essential story is that aliens have been here for a few years, and they've used adult humans to do all the dirty work, which is they're strip mining our planet to take the resources, right? But they're using adults to do it, and they're using the children. They're holding all the children, almost all the children, as leverage to keep the adults working, basically.
Cool.
um, but they've also at the same time turned our technology against us, so we're really just being used as manual labor to get the machine, to maintain the machinery of our destruction. So the reason why I'm doing this is to prove workflow.
Yeah.
This and another project that I'm working on with, I got a couple of Hollywood actors that I'm working with that on another project, but that we're also going to be doing on mobile. But it's really to prove the workflow, because we've seen Sean Baker, shoot Tangerine, and we've seen Steven Soderbergh, shoot a couple of features, but those are features,
Yeah.
and those are great, and those guys are who they are, right? I am not them. So so what I wanted to do was prove that we could use a mobile device to shoot a proper, like, serial, like a series, and bring it to the masses. And I believe we're going to do that. So what I've done is I've assembled a crew, a crew, actually, me and one other producer. That's it, again,
Yeah.
and possibly Mickey, my sound guy, and then and we've assembled a cast. We've cast some really good actors, all local again. We've found some really cool locations. There's this metal fabrication, kind of like an artist studio metal fabrication place that looks really dystopian. So the building itself is built out of shipping containers that they've chopped up and made the building out of it. And
Oh,
man,
wicked.
yeah, it's super cool, super cool. So that's these there are a couple of rebel factions who are run by an ex-husband and wife, who have to bring their groups together, to try to stick it to the aliens, to kind of prove that that the gods can bleed, and if they can do
Yeah.
that, then it'll give hope to everybody else, and everybody will rise up and boot them out. So that's the overall story. That one's really interesting because again, I wanted to prove the workflow, which is shooting it on mobile, editing it on mobile, bringing what I so editing it on LumaFusion, bringing it into After Effects, Adobe After Effects, to do the compositing, because got spaceships and robots and all that kind of
Yeah.
good sci-fi stuff.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, and then taking all of that footage, and those cuts, using Frame.io, which is integrated within LumaFusion. And for people who don't know what Frame.io is, it's a collaboration platform for filmmakers where you can put up cuts, or different assets up into this storage drive, and you know, like if I wanted your opinion on a scene, you could literally write, you know, on the timeline there, you know, hey, you know, make this a little bit more green or cut here or whatever. But it's typically a collaboration platform. But my workflow is, you know, take it out of LumaFusion using the XML export, bring it into After Effects using there's a plugin from by Automatic Duck. Bring that into to After Effects, do the compositing, and then using Frame.io, export my video to Frame.io, which again is integrated into LumaFusion, and just dropping in my completed visual from After Effects right back onto the timeline. So it's a big old round trip
Well,
LumaFusion. So that's going to be my overall workflow for that.
and is that you doing all of that? The
Correct.
editing and all the visual effects?
Yeah.
So you're pretty ambitious. You're doing all of this. You must be pretty good at it now.
I'm just stupid. Stupid or crazy. One of the two, and it's probably
Welcome to the
both.
club.
As if I had learned my lesson from before. Yeah, I went bigger
Yeah.
with it. But you know, really what it is, again, if I can do it, then there's so many more talented, you know, filmmakers out there that can do. I mean, I've seen people do stuff on YouTube that I'm just like, oh my God, I wish I could be where they are when it comes to visual effects and all that. I'm serviceable, you know, I can get it done, you know. The things that I can't get done, I'm just like, well, you know, maybe it doesn't need to explode that big. Just a little explosion, you know. So, you know, I kind of, you know, I'll justify it in my head, and I'll make it work for what I feel I can get out of myself. But yeah, you know, all these tools are here, you know, for us to use, and they're less and less expensive, and they're more and more accessible, and why not?
Well, I was going to say as well, because you sent me a clip of you capturing the footage, I think, for that as well.
Yeah,
Like on a speedboat or something like that.
right, yeah. So they're you know, so they the ship these ships have come, and they've kind of augured themselves into the ground, you know, like, and the ships that come out of the orbit kind of boom hit and then drill themselves into the ground, and those are the mining apparatus that's being used. So so I was just getting B-roll footage of, you know, where the ship there's a shuttle that goes from the ground to the big mining apparatus. And you know, so there was a scene where one of the shuttles explodes, you know, and so I was shooting the B-roll, the visual effects plate for that, but then also B-roll of the city, because it happens just north of Seattle. And you know, so I was, you know, seeing some of the skyline, and then you land on, you know, the big thing that's kind of overshadowing the city and all of
Yeah.
that kind of, so, you know, just shooting all the things. And you know, because we're in the time of COVID, um you know, we wanted to do it in a, you know, in a safe way. So it was like only three of us on this, you know, good sized boat. And so it was the person who was driving, who was actually one of our actors in the show, my producer, and me, you know. So we were all on different parts of the boat, separated by however many feet, you know, and I was just on the back of the boat just shooting. I was actually shooting Zhiyun, what is it, the Zhiyun Weeble S.
I haven't heard of that. Is that a larger one that you can use DSLRs, or is that a smaller one?
So yeah, it is a larger one. It's a larger gimbal, but I had this with my phone inside of the Beast Cage, not the Beast Grip, not the Beast Grip Pro, but the Beast Cage, which is the metal one, the aluminum. That's this guy. You know, of course, I stripped it with of all this other stuff, but it's aircraft aluminum. You know, but so I put that on there, and you know, was using different lenses, um but yeah, this thing takes a heavier payload, which I really appreciated, because I was using other lenses. I was using, you know, some bigger, much bigger lenses, like what's on my Beastgrip now, but so I'm using,
Oh wow,
you
that
know,
is big. Yeah.
yeah, these are Beastgrip lenses. And so so I used that, so you know, I was, you know, able to keep everything as stable as I could. And then when I needed to, because I have a this little quick release for it,
Mm-hmm.
that I just pop it on my monopod, you know.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
hand on it, and on one of the legs. So it worked out really well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So you're using what smartphones are you using for this particular series?
So I'm right now I have the 11 Pro Max, the iPhone 11 Pro Max, but then I'm getting my 12 Pro.
Oh,
Um,
cool. So
yeah,
jealous.
yeah. I mean, so what I really want to do is, I mean, that 10-bit, that
Yes, yes.
10
That
bit.
sweet 10-bit.
It's just every little bit of ability to color correct, because I want to. There's heavy like heavy contrast in the show, so there's going to be bright, brights, and and kind of really darks, so I wanted to be able to kind of see into the shadows as much as I could, but then not be so blown out where I can't save it, um yeah, so that's kind of the my reasoning behind it. And again, this is a series. It's experimental, so that could work and that might not, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But the great thing is I can literally shoot a test, and I've gone into the location multiple times and shot little tests and whatever, but with my current phone. But with the next phone, I'm going to be able to go in there and check out what I really can and can't do, what corners I can and can't see into.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm really excited about that.
And are you using Filmic Pro this time, or are you using a different app for this one?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Some people are saying, oh, just use the native app, with the Dolby Vision, stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think so. Not for me. I want to have as much control as possible, with
exactly. That's what Filmic Pro gives you. I love Filmic Pro. Use it all the time.
it pound for pound, it's the best app for filmmaking on mobile. So there are other great softwares out there, and that I think do relatively some of the same things. I happen to like the workflow of Filmic.
Yeah, same.
Plus I know, they really work hard on this stuff. Not that the others don't, but I happen to know these guys. I know how hard they work on this product, and man, do they do a great job, and it works for me.
Yeah.
Other, use what you're comfortable with, but that's what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I've seen some people say like, oh yeah, I think it's 10, 15 pounds for an app. It's so expensive, but it's not like a normal app. It's not like an app like Tinder or something like that. This is like a really good app that can change your whole film. Like you say, give you complete control over what you're filming. You've got your frame rates, you've got aspect ratios and stuff that add lenses to it. It
Right.
completely gives you so much control. You can make a really cool film for relatively no money, really.
I think that argument is really funny when people talk about apps, being so expensive. Okay, $20. Okay, then go out and buy a camera right now. Go
Yeah,
out and buy any camera out there right now and see how much you're going to pay for that.
yeah.
So
Or buy a
you
few coffees.
yeah, seriously, for probably the price of maybe 4 Starbucks, runs, you can have your app.
Yeah. And
You
that's
know,
for life, and it will be improved throughout. And you can buy the extras if you want. You don't have to.
right, right. You don't have to. So I got it with the cinematographer kit, which opens up, the uh log capture, and all the other bells and whistles. I like to have them all, and I use log capture all the time.
I was going to
Um,
use, yeah, whether you use log or flat. I use flat because I find I get too much noise in log, but that might be just because I'm using an older phone. I wasn't sure, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So so you brought up a good point. Is using flat probably works out 9 times out of 10 better for most people, especially if you have an older phone. But if you have a
Yeah.
newer phone, and in particular probably the latest phone, using flat would be great, but using log, I think, just gives you that extra dynamic range that you're probably going to be looking for. But then again, how much color correction are you doing also?
Yeah.
Because when you get into log, you're getting into heavier workflows. When you're shooting flat, you're you're doing a lighter color correction than you would be, on log. So
Yeah. Yes, totally. I've enjoyed using flat with log. I did some tests on my channel as well for that to see how much you can see into shadows. And it does make a big difference. I was really surprised. I thought maybe it's a bit of a gimmick, but actually like you say, if you want to get more into color grading, correcting and stuff, you can get
Right.
such a nice kind of tone in there and change things up.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So um, every little bit of control that you can get, and then of course, the great thing is that you have all these LUTs, lookup tables for those who
Yeah.
not sure what it is, which is this little thing that you drop on your footage that turns your footage from log to what we call Rec 709 or Rec 2020 or whatever, but it turned to regular video, but you still have all the latitude, to be able to color correct with it, and those things are built into LumaFusion, which is also great, so the LUTs, you just take your LUT and drop it in, and you can edit right there on your phone or your iPad,
That's
which
so
is
cool, isn't it? You
fantastic.
could be anywhere. You could be on a bus, you could be on a boat in the middle of the sea, you could just be editing wherever you go.
Yeah, yeah, and then now, because of the new M1 Max, I haven't gotten one yet, but because of the new M1 Max, you can actually use LumaFusion on your M1 Mac. You can literally do your whole workflow out in the field, and when you get home, on the same software. Right now, there has never been in the history of ever a better time to be a filmmaker or a content creator. You
Completely
know,
agree. Completely agree.
all this great beautiful software that we've got, and hardware, that's so accessible, 'cause I'm sitting here, I'm talking to you on my computer right now, but I've got my phone and two iPads, right? And that's my workflow. I'm
Yeah.
literally all my whole workflow is right here on my desk, so it's a great time, even if you don't want to spend the money on those apps, the apps, the native apps on the phones, are just getting better and better every day. um
Whereas iMovie, it's basic, but it's good if you want to start learning.
right, yeah, so in essence, don't wait for permission.
Yeah.
you know if, what you have, like, if you for some reason can't stomach, spending, 20 pounds or $20 on an app, then use what's on your phone right now. Just go and
Yeah.
do so.
Yeah, there are
you know I,
free options.
yeah, there are free options, and there are open source options, there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Moving on to some of the last questions, I've got a couple of fun ones here. Well, hopefully they're fun. So something I wanted to ask you was if you could make a sequel to any film that's already been made on a smartphone, what film would you want to make with a smartphone and why?
Can I use a TV show?
Yeah, yeah.
I would probably try to shoot Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
The series, yeah, I would probably try to do that, just because, like, all the stuff that, on the ship, all that kind of stuff is great, but then when you get into the cockpits, of the Vipers and all that kind of stuff, being able to put the camera like right there,
Oh,
that would
yeah.
I think that would really be fun. So I would probably do that because it's a very gritty, um you know very stylistic show, and I would want to do that and try to push it with that, which again is part of what I'm doing, with my Uprising.
Yeah.
It's gritty, it's not Battlestar Galactica by any means, but it's meant to be gritty and to kind of push it. So yeah, I would do that. So probably Battlestar Galactica.
Lastly, I wanted to ask you with smartphones, given we got the iPhone 12 Pro Max and stuff, the better low light capabilities, Android phones have good capabilities as well. What is the next upgrade you'd like to see for smartphone cameras moving forward?
Cell phones and DSLRs are probably closer than they are apart at this point, right?
Yeah, completely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so what I would like to see is better low light capability. Obviously, that's a bigger, that's one of the big ticket items. So better low light capability, which means essentially a bigger sensor, being able to get, a little bit more shallow depth of field, which of course is a bigger sensor. It's gonna sound weird, but I'd really like the headphone jack back.
Yes. Yeah.
I- it's like,
That's
they
a
took it.
stupid change.
It is. I mean, it's a stupid change, but when you're talking about being able to plug in audio into your thing, sure, it's fine. Living the dongle life, and I get it. That's just where we're at. But now it looks like we're starting to get into the whole portless phone thing, and that
Yeah.
that that's going to be a little bit of a headache, especially for doing, either a dual audio, or an attached onboard audio, not having any ports, I don't know, that's going to be a really hard pill to swallow for me.
Yeah. I was really
Yeah.
lucky. My brother-in-law gave me his iPhone 8. So I was like, oh, great, now I've got storage to play with, because my iPhone 6S has like 32 gigs. And the battery just, as soon as you start filming, within about 20 minutes, it's like dead.
So more storage is always better. You can never have much storage. But I would also like faster transfer speeds if you're taking it from your iPhone or Android or whatever it is to another device like an iPad or your computer. I'd like faster transfer speeds.
Before we finish, I want to ask if there's anything you want to plug in terms of whether your sci-fi series is coming out on a certain platform, you want to plug that, or your YouTube channel, anything like that at all?
Well, so stay tuned on the Sci-Fi, because everything that I'm going to be doing on my Made on Mobile, it's Made on Mobile TV, which is my my YouTube.
I'm a subscriber. Everyone subscribe to that.
Thank you. So yeah, so like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. You got to do that, both for Rob and for my channel, please.
Yeah.
It's really important for us content makers. But so yeah, so Made on Mobile TV, Instagram, and which I don't use really as much, but Twitter, I really like Twitter. But then I am CGJ, which is my personal one, and that one seems to be the one that I talk to people the most on. Made on Mobile TV, because everything that I'm going to be doing in terms of documenting the series is going to end up on my YouTube channel. It's funny that we're doing this on Tuesday. We're going to be doing this soon. It's called Tough Love Tuesdays.
Great.
Tough Love Tuesdays is going to be, me, you, Dean Nimmin, Caroline Scott, Ryan Camp, Glenn, like others, like the people in our core, our core orbit, trying to help people get over the hump of creating whatever they want to create, so whether it's a movie or a YouTube video or whatever it is, we all need that kick in the pants sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And we're going to do it. We're going to be tough, but we're going to do it with love. So we're just going to be there to help out, right? And it's going to be live streamed, which is great. So people will be able to interact just live, if they've got questions, if they want to come on, we can invite them on, so we can talk about the problems. But yeah, Tough Love Tuesdays. And I'm saying that, because it's usually Taco Tuesday, I'm saying it's almost better than tacos.
Listen, Courtney, it's been awesome having you on. Thank you so much for being the first guest on this channel for interviews and chats. I hope everyone's learned a lot. Yes.
Awesome.
History being made. And it's been really fun chatting to you.
I'm not saying that I started it, but
I kind of did. I'm kind of a big deal. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for joining me. Yeah, hope everyone's enjoyed watching this and learned a lot. And we'll do some more in the future, and we'll catch up with Courtney for sure when you get further along the line with your sci-fi series as well. Thanks so much, Courtney. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.